Janelle Richardson checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The airport was busier than she had expected for a Tuesday morning. She gripped her daughter's small hand a little tighter as they navigated through the crowd. "Mom, are we really going to sit in those big chairs at the front of the plane?" 10-year-old Zoe looked up with eyes wide with wonder, her pink backpack bouncing slightly with each excited step. "Yes, baby. First class all the way." Janelle couldn't help but smile despite her nerves. This trip had been in the works for nearly a year. A special celebration after she'd finally landed the senior marketing position she'd been chasing for the past 3 years. The promotion had come with a substantial raise, enough to finally afford the kind of vacation they deserved. Disney World in first class. The memory of Zoe's face when she'd unwrapped the surprise trip on her birthday still made Janelle's heart swell. Will they give us those warm towels like in the movies? Zoe was practically skipping now, her braids bouncing with each step, and those fancy meals on real plates, Janelle added. No plastic wrap for us this time. The truth was, Janelle had never flown first class either. The tickets had cost more than she'd initially budgeted, but after years of cramped economy seats and delayed flights while traveling for work, she'd decided they both deserved this luxury, just this once. They stopped at a coffee shop and Janelle splurged on an overpriced latte and a hot chocolate for Zoe. They found seats near their gate with a clear view of the planes taking off and landing. "Look how big they are," Zoe pressed, her face against the window, her breath fogging up the glass. "Which one is ours?" "I'm not sure yet, sweetie, but we have some time before boarding." Janelle pulled out her phone and quickly checked her emails. Even though she was technically on vacation, she couldn't help but make sure everything was in order for the conference she would attend in Orlando after their 3 days at Disney. The presentation she had prepared on digital marketing strategies was saved in 3 different places: her laptop, her cloud drive, and a USB stick tucked safely in her carry-on. Perhaps it was overkill, but Janelle had learned early in her career that preparation was everything. Her boss had been surprisingly supportive of her taking this trip, even knowing she would be combining it with the conference. "You've earned it," he had said. "The team can survive without you for a week." It was the kind of validation that still felt new to her, even after months in her new position. A notification popped up on her phone. A message from her mother. "Did you pack Zoe's allergy medicine and her inhaler? Text me when you land." Janelle smiled and typed a quick response. "Yes to both. We'll text when we're on the ground. Love you." Her mother had offered to come along, but Janelle had wanted this trip to be just her and Zoe. Their own special adventure. Though she had to admit, an extra set of hands would have been nice when lugging their suitcases through the parking garage earlier. "Mom, can I have my tablet now?" Zoe had already finished her hot chocolate, a thin line of whipped cream still visible on her upper lip. "Here, you've got a little..." Janelle reached over with a napkin and wiped her daughter's mouth. "Let's wait until we're on the plane for the tablet, okay? We'll be boarding soon." Zoe nodded and returned to watching the planes, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the window. Janelle took the moment to breathe and really look at her daughter. How much she had grown in the past year. How her face was slowly losing its baby roundness. These moments were fleeting, and Janelle was determined to be present for them. Despite the constant pull of work emails and deadlines, she thought about how far they had come. The early years after Zoe was born had been a struggle, completing her degree at night while working full-time during the day, relying on her mother for childcare, pinching pennies to make rent. There had been times when a trip like this seemed like an impossible fantasy. "Attention passengers on Flight 1482 to Orlando." The gate agent's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "We will begin boarding in approximately 15 minutes. Please have your boarding passes and identification ready." "That's us." Zoe bounced in her seat, her earlier patience evaporating instantly. "Let me double-check we have everything." Janelle did a quick inventory of their carry-ons. Zoe's tablet and headphones, snacks, their boarding passes, IDs. A change of clothes for each of them in case their luggage was delayed, Zoe's comfort blanket for the flight, and yes, the allergy medicine and inhaler her mother had reminded her about. As she zipped up her bag, Janelle felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. She had triple-checked their tickets when purchasing them, making sure they had seats together in first class. She had even called the airline directly to confirm. But there was still that nagging worry that something would go wrong, that there had been a mistake, that they would arrive at the gate only to be told there was no record of their tickets. Was an anxiety she had carried with her for years, the sense that good things might be snatched away at any moment, that she didn't quite deserve them. Her therapist had a name for it: imposter syndrome. Apparently, it was common among successful women, especially those who had worked their way up from nothing. "Can I go look at the plane up close?" Zoe was already standing, pointing to the large windows on the other side of the gate area. "Sure, but stay where I can see you." Janelle watched as her daughter practically ran to the window, weaving between tired travelers with the effortless energy of childhood. Watching Zoe's excitement, Janelle made a silent promise to herself. For the next week, she would put away her worries. She would not check her work email more than once a day. She would be fully present with her daughter, making memories that would last them both a lifetime. A businessman in an expensive-looking suit took the seat next to her, immediately, pulling out a laptop. He gave her a brief nod before immersing himself in whatever important work couldn't wait until he reached his destination. Janelle recognized the type. She worked with plenty of them. Until recently, she had been one of them. Her phone buzzed, with another notification. This time it was from her friend Tanya. "Have an amazing time. Zoe is going to flip when she sees the castle. Take lots of pictures." Janelle smiled and sent back a quick thumbs-up emoji. Tanya had been her roommate in college and had remained her closest friend through the years. She had been there through every up and down: the grueling job search after graduation, the unexpected pregnancy, the endless nights of studying for her master's while Zoe slept in the next room. "Your daughter is going to be so proud of you. One day," Tanya had told her during a particularly rough patch, "she already sees how hard you work for her." Mom, I think that's our plane." Zoe was waving frantically from the window, pointing at a massive aircraft that had just pulled up to the gate. Janelle gathered their things and joined her daughter. "That's a big one, isn't it?" "It's huge. How does something that big even get off the ground?" "That's the magic of science, baby." Janelle put an arm around Zoe's shoulders. "Are you excited?" "So excited." Zoe was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Do you think Mickey Mouse will be at the airport to meet us?" Janelle laughed. "Probably not at the airport, but we'll see him at the park for sure. We have that special character breakfast booked, remember?" The gate area was filling up now, passengers gravitating closer to the boarding area in anticipation. Janelle noticed several other families with children, most looking considerably more harried than she felt. One mother was juggling a baby on her hip while trying to keep track of two toddlers who seemed determined to run in opposite directions. "We will now begin boarding for Flight 1482 to Orlando," the gate agent announced. "We invite our first-class passengers, active military personnel, and those needing special assistance to board at this time." "That's us," Zoe tugged at Janelle's hand. "We get to go first." Janelle felt a moment of self-consciousness as they approached the gate. Despite her success, she still sometimes felt out of place in luxury settings. Would the other first-class passengers, mostly business travelers and wealthy families, look at her and somehow know this was her first time? She straightened her shoulders and reminded herself that she had earned this. She had worked hard for years, climbing the corporate ladder one exhausting rung at a time. This trip, this splurge, was the result of her dedication and persistence. "Boarding passes, please," the gate agent said with a practiced smile. Janelle handed over their passes and IDs, noticing the slight widening of the agent's eyes as he looked from the passes to them and back again. "First time in first class?" he asked, his tone friendly but somehow making Janelle feel even more self-conscious. "Yes," she answered simply, refusing to apologize or explain. "Well, you're in for a treat." He handed back their documents and gestured toward the jetway. "Enjoy your flight." As they walked down the jetway, Zoe skipping ahead, Janelle felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the next week, She wouldn't be the single mom struggling to balance work and parenting. She wouldn't be the team leader responsible for marketing strategies and budget meetings. She would simply be Zoe's mom, creating memories at the most magical place on earth. "Mom, hurry," Zoe called from ahead. "I want to see our big seats." Janelle quickened her pace, her heart full of anticipation for the adventure ahead. What challenges awaited her back in the real world could wait. For now, there was only this moment, this trip, this precious time with her daughter. And as they stepped onto the plane, greeted by the warm smiles of the flight attendants, Janelle knew with absolute certainty that every late night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt had been worth it to see the joy on her daughter's face. "Welcome aboard," the flight attendant said. "Can I get you ladies something to drink before takeoff?" Zoe looked at her mother with wide eyes, as if seeking permission for this unexpected luxury. "Orange juice for my daughter," Janelle said with a confidence that surprised even herself. "And I'll have champagne, please, we're celebrating." They settled into their spacious seats, the soft leather a world away from the cramped economy class they were used to. As the champagne was poured into a real glass flute, Janelle took a moment to appreciate how far they had come, and all the possibilities that still lay ahead. "To our adventure," she whispered to Zoe, who giggled and clinked her plastic cup of juice against her mother's champagne. The adventure was just beginning. The return trip started out perfectly. Janelle and Zoe arrived at Orlando International Airport 3 hours early, giving them plenty of time to grab lunch and browse the Disney store one last time. Zoe clutched her new Moana doll, a final souvenir from their magical 5 days at the parks. "Can we come back next year?" Zoe asked, her eyes still bright despite the tiredness that was starting to show around the edges. They had stayed until closing the night before, watching the fireworks explode over Cinderella's castle one last time. "We'll see," Janelle said, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. This was a special trip, but maybe in a couple of years. The truth was, this vacation had stretched her budget to the limit, even with her recent promotion. Between the park tickets, the hotel, the meals, and of course the first-class plane tickets, Janelle had spent more than she'd initially planned. But seeing the joy on Zoe's face as she met her favorite princesses and rode Space Mountain for the first time had been worth every penny. They found seats near their gate, and Janelle checked the time, still 2 hours before boarding. She pulled out her laptop, intending to review her presentation for tomorrow, one last time. The marketing conference had gone well, with several potential clients expressing interest in her agency's services. Her boss had already texted to congratulate her on landing a meeting with a major retail chain. "Mom, I'm hungry again," Zoe said, interrupting Janelle's thoughts. Janelle looked up from her laptop. "We just had lunch an hour ago." "I know, but I'm still hungry. Can I have a snack?" Janelle sighed but reached into her bag for the emergency granola bars she always kept on hand. "Here you go. But save some room for the food on the plane, remember?" Zoe's eyes lit up. The ice cream sundaes. On their flight to Orlando, the first-class service had included made-to-order ice cream sundaes, a luxury that had delighted Zoe, beyond words. She had talked about it almost as much as meeting Elsa and Anna. "That's right, though I'm not sure they'll have the same desserts on this flight." As Zoe munched on her granola bar, Janelle returned to her presentation. The conference had been a success, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to over-deliver, to justify being away from the office for a full week. Even though half of that time had been spent networking and attending sessions, she still felt the need to prove it had been worthwhile. The gate area slowly filled with other passengers. Janelle noticed a few families with Disney merchandise, fellow vacationers heading home. There were also the usual business travelers, most of them men in wrinkled suits, eyes glued to phones or laptops. A new gate agent arrived and set up at the counter. He was a thin man with a permanent frown etched into his face, his movements sharp and impatient as he arranged his workspace. His name tag read, Trevor. Janelle watched him for a moment, recognizing the signs of someone having a bad day. She had dealt with plenty of difficult personalities in her career, and had learned that a little kindness could sometimes diffuse a tense situation. "Attention passengers on Flight 287 to Denver," Trevor announced, his voice lacking the usual customer service warmth. We're experiencing a slight delay due to incoming aircraft. New boarding time will be approximately 3:45 p.m. A collective groan rose from the waiting passengers. Janelle checked the time. That was an hour later than scheduled. She quickly sent a text to her mother, who was planning to pick them up from the Denver airport. "What's wrong?" Zoe asked, noticing her mother's expression. "The plane's going to be a little late, that's all. We might not get home until after bedtime. Can I watch a movie on the tablet then?" "Sure." Janelle handed over the device, grateful for the distraction. She returned to her work but found it harder to concentrate now. If they landed too late, she might not have time to properly prepare for her meeting tomorrow morning. The hour passed slowly. Zoe finished her movie and started getting restless, walking back and forth in front of their seats, occasionally stopping to look out the windows at the planes. "Please stay where I can see you," Janelle reminded her for the third time as Zoe wandered a little too far for comfort. "I'm just looking at that plane over there." Zoe pointed to a massive aircraft being loaded with luggage. "I know, but it's crowded in here. Come sit down for a bit." Zoe reluctantly returned to her seat, fidgeting with her Moana doll. "How much longer?" Janelle checked the time again. "They should start boarding soon." As if on cue, Trevor's voice came over the loudspeaker. "We will now begin pre-boarding for Flight 287 to Denver. Please have your boarding passes and identification ready." Janelle began gathering their things, putting away her laptop and making sure they hadn't left anything behind. She double-checked their boarding passes on her phone, confirming they still had their first-class seats. "We invite our first-class passengers, active military personnel, and those needing special assistance to board at this time," Trevor announced. "That's us." Zoe jumped up, suddenly energized. They joined the short line forming at the gate. Ahead of them were two men in business suits and an elderly couple who had been quietly reading books while waiting. Janelle noticed Trevor's eyes narrowing slightly as she and Zoe approached the counter. "Boarding passes and ID," he said curtly, not making eye contact. Janelle pulled up the digital passes on her phone and handed over her driver's license. "We're in first class, seats 3A and 3B. Trevor looked at the boarding passes, then at Janelle and Zoe, then back at the passes. His frown deepened. "How did you get these seats?" The question caught Janelle off guard. "I purchased them when I booked our flights. These are premium seats," Trevor said, his tone suggesting she might not have understood. "Yes, I'm aware, that's what I paid for." Trevor's eyes flicked to the line forming behind them. "Wait over there for a moment, I need to verify something." Janelle felt her cheeks warming. "Is there a problem?" "Just step aside, ma'am." The firmness in his voice made it clear he wasn't making a request. Janelle moved to the side, keeping a tight hold on Zoe's hand. She watched as Trevor waved through the business travelers, checking their boarding passes with barely a glance. "Mom, what's happening?" Zoe whispered, picking up on the tension. "Just a mix-up, I'm sure," Janelle said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're probably checking something with our seats." But as more passengers were allowed to board, including some who were clearly not in first class, Janelle's patience began to wear thin. She approached the counter again. "Excuse me, but we really should be boarding now. Our seats are in first class and those passengers have already gone through." Trevor looked up, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "I told you I needed to verify something." "And what exactly needs verification?" "I purchased these tickets months ago. We flew first class on the way here with no issues." "Ma'am, if you could just be patient." "I have been patient," Janelle cut in, aware that her voice was rising but unable to stop it. "We've been waiting while you've allowed other passengers to board ahead of us. I'd like to know why." Trevor's jaw tightened. "Your boarding passes seem irregular." "Irregular how?" "The system is showing an unusual upgrade pattern." Janelle took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "There was no upgrade. I purchased first-class tickets directly from the airline's website. We flew first class on our outbound flight 5 days ago without any issues." Trevor's expression suggested he didn't believe her. "Do you have the original receipt?" "It's in my email." "Yes." Janelle pulled out her phone again, quickly searching for the confirmation email she'd received months ago. She found it, and handed the phone to Trevor. As you can see, I paid for first class both ways. Trevor barely glanced at the email before handing the phone back. This doesn't match what I'm seeing in our system. Then your system is wrong, Janelle said firmly. I have the receipt showing exactly what I paid for. By now, other passengers were watching the exchange with interest. Janelle could feel their eyes on her, could almost hear their thoughts. Why was this woman being difficult? Why was she holding up the line? Mom, Zoe tugged at her hand, her voice small. Are we going to miss the plane? No, sweetheart, we're not. Janelle turned back to Trevor. Look, I don't know what the issue is here, but we have valid tickets for first-class seats that I paid for. I would appreciate it if you would let us board now. Trevor's face hardened. I'm going to need you to step back while I sort this out. There are other passengers waiting. The other first-class passengers have already boarded, Janelle pointed out. We should be on that plane too. Ma'am, if you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to call security. The threat hung in the air between them. Janelle felt a cold rush of fear, followed immediately by anger. She was being disruptive by asking why they weren't being allowed to board with tickets she had legitimately purchased. I'd like to speak to your supervisor, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. My supervisor is busy at the moment. Then call them, please. Trevor stared at her for a long moment, then picked up a phone without breaking eye contact. He spoke in a low voice that Janelle couldn't hear, then hung up. A supervisor will be here shortly. Please wait over there. He pointed to a spot away from the boarding line. Janelle led Zoe to the indicated area, her mind racing. What was happening? Was this some kind of computer glitch? Or was there something more troubling going on? She noticed a few other passengers looking at them with curiosity or concern. One woman who had been in line behind them initially gave Janelle a sympathetic smile before boarding the plane. Mom, I don't feel good, Zoe whispered. Janelle knelt down to her daughter's level. What's wrong, baby? My tummy hurts. And I'm scared. There's nothing to be scared of, Janelle assured her, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. It's just a misunderstanding. We'll be on the plane soon. But as the minutes ticked by and more passengers boarded, Janelle's confidence began to waver. What if they weren't allowed on the flight at all? They needed to get back to Denver tonight. She had an important meeting in the morning and Zoe had school. She watched as Trevor continued processing other passengers, his manner notably more pleasant with them than it had been with her. When an older white couple approached with what appeared to be economy tickets and asked about an upgrade, she saw him smile for the first time and check his computer with apparent helpfulness. That was when the realization hit her. This wasn't about irregular boarding passes or system errors. This was about something else entirely. She felt her phone buzz in her pocket, a text from her mother asking if they'd boarded yet. Janelle didn't answer. She didn't want to worry her mom, not until she knew exactly what was going on. After what seemed like an eternity, a woman in a crisp airline uniform approached them. Her name tag identified her as Marissa Chen, gate supervisor. I understand there's an issue with your boarding passes? Marissa asked, her tone professional but not unfriendly. Yes, Janelle began, relieved to finally be talking to someone else. We have first-class tickets that I purchased months ago, but your colleague seems to think there's something irregular about them and won't let us board. Marissa held out her hand. May I see your boarding passes and ID, please? Janelle handed over her phone and driver's license again. Marissa studied them carefully, then checked something on her tablet. Ms. Richardson, I'm showing that you purchased 2 first-class round-trip tickets from Denver to Orlando. Is that correct? Yes, exactly. And you flew first class on your outbound flight 5 days ago? Yes, we did. Without any issues. Marissa nodded, then looked at Trevor, who had been watching their interaction while continuing to process other passengers. Trevor, could you come over here for a moment? Trevor approached, his face carefully blank. These passengers have valid first-class tickets, Marissa said, her voice low but firm. Please issue their boarding passes immediately. The system was showing, Trevor began. I've checked the system, Marissa cut in. Their tickets are perfectly valid. Please issue their boarding passes now. Trevor's jaw tightened, but he nodded, stiffly, and returned to the counter. Marissa turned back to Janelle with an apologetic smile. "I'm very sorry for the confusion, Ms. Richardson. You and your daughter will be boarded right away." "Thank you," Janelle said, relief washing over her. "But I have to ask, what was the actual issue? Because from where I'm standing, it seemed less like a system error and more like—" She trailed off, not wanting to make the accusation out loud, especially with Zoe listening. Marissa's expression became carefully neutral. "I assure you we'll be looking into exactly what happened. Trevor will issue your boarding passes, and I'll personally escort you onto the plane." Before Janelle could respond, Trevor called out, "Richardson, party of 2. They approached the counter again. Trevor printed physical boarding passes and handed them over without making eye contact. "Seats 3A and 3B, he said flatly. Janelle took the passes, noticing that her hands were shaking slightly. She felt Zoe press against her side, uncharacteristically quiet. As promised, Marissa walked them to the plane entrance. "Again, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. Please let our flight attendants know if there's anything you need during the flight." "Thank you," Janelle said, then paused. "I'd like to file a formal complaint when we land." Marissa nodded. "Of course. Our customer service team will be available to assist you." As they walked down the jetway, Zoe finally spoke up. "Mom, why was that man so mean to us?" Janelle struggled with how to answer. How do you explain discrimination to a 10-year-old? How do you tell your child that sometimes people will treat them differently based solely on the color of their skin? "Some people have bad days," she said finally, "and sometimes they take their bad days out on others." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough for now. There would be time for harder conversations later. They boarded the plane and found their seats. The flight attendant greeted them warmly, offering pre-flight beverages just as on their outbound journey. But Janelle found it hard to relax. The encounter at the gate had left her shaken, a familiar knot of anger and hurt sitting heavy in her chest. As they settled in, a man in a business suit across the aisle leaned over. "I saw what happened at the gate," he said quietly. "I'm an attorney. What that agent did wasn't right. Here's my card, if you'd like to talk after we land." He handed Janelle a business card. David Goldstein, civil rights attorney. Janelle took the card, her mind already racing with thoughts of what came next. But for now, she tucked it into her wallet and turned her attention to Zoe, who was finally starting to relax as she explored the features of her first-class seat again. "Still want that ice cream sundae?" Janelle asked, forcing a smile. Zoe nodded, enthusiastically. "With extra sprinkles." "Extra sprinkles it is," Janelle agreed, determined not to let what had happened ruin the end of their special trip. But as the plane began to taxi, she couldn't shake the feeling that this incident wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The flight attendant had just finished serving Janelle her second cup of coffee when the plane began its final descent into Denver. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, and the captain's voice came over the intercom announcing their arrival time and the local weather, a chilly 45 degrees, quite a change from Orlando's balmy temperatures. Beside her, Zoe had finally dozed off, her head resting against the window, the Moana doll still clutched tightly in her small hands. Janelle gently brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead, taking a moment to study her peaceful face. The incident at the gate seemed to have faded from Zoe's mind, replaced by the excitement of ice cream sundaes and the in-flight movie. Children were resilient that way. Janelle wished she could say the same for herself. Throughout the 4-hour flight, her mind had repeatedly returned to those tense moments with Trevor, replaying each interaction, each dismissive glance, each condescending word. The knot in her stomach had loosened somewhat, but the anger remained, simmering just below the surface. She reached into her purse and pulled out the business card the attorney had given her. David Goldstein, civil rights attorney. His office was in downtown Denver, not far from her own workplace. She turned the card over in her hands, considering her options. Was this something she wanted to pursue? Filing a formal complaint would take time and energy. Two things she had precious little of as a single working mother. And what would come of it? An apology from the airline? A voucher for future travel? Would it make any real difference? But then she thought about what message staying silent would send to Zoe. Her daughter might be too young to fully understand what had happened today, but someday she would face her own encounters with prejudice. What would Janelle tell her then? To keep her head down? To accept being treated as less than? No, that wasn't the example she wanted to set. The attorney across the aisle caught her eye and gave a subtle nod, as if reading her thoughts. He'd been respectful throughout the flight, not pressing her for a decision, simply making himself available if she chose to reach out. Janelle slipped the card into the front pocket of her wallet, not committing to anything yet, but keeping the option open. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach to Denver International Airport, the flight attendant announced. Please make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their upright and locked positions. Janelle gently woke Zoe, helping her put away her toys and buckle her seatbelt more securely. As the plane descended through the clouds, the lights of Denver came into view, a sparkling grid against the darkness. Are we home? Zoe asked sleepily. Almost, baby. Just a few more minutes. By the time they land, Dee and taxied to the gate. Zoe was fully awake again, chattering about seeing her grandmother and telling her friends at school about meeting Elsa and Anna. Can I wear my Disney shirt tomorrow? Sure, Janelle agreed, gathering their belongings, as the seatbelt sign turned off. But remember, you'll need your jacket too. It's much colder here than in Florida. They waited for the first-class passengers to begin deplaning. The flight attendant who had served them throughout the journey stopped by their seats. Thank you for flying with us today, she said, her smile warm and genuine. I heard there was some trouble at the gate in Orlando. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of properly on board. Janelle was surprised by the acknowledgement. Yes, thank you. The service on the flight was excellent. The flight attendant lowered her voice slightly. I've noted the incident in my report. It shouldn't have happened, and I'm sorry that it did. Before Janelle could respond, the flight attendant moved on to assist other passengers. The brief interaction left Janelle wondering just how many airline employees were aware of what had happened at the gate. As they made their way through the jetway and into the terminal, Janelle noticed David Goldstein walking a few paces ahead of them. He glanced back, catching her eye again, and slowed his steps. I don't mean to intrude, he said when they reached him, but I wanted to make sure you were okay. What happened back there? He shook his head. It wasn't right. No, it wasn't, Janelle agreed, keeping her voice low so Zoe wouldn't hear. But I'm still processing everything. I understand. It's a lot to take in. He gestured to the business card she'd tucked away. My office specializes in cases like yours. If you decide you want to talk about your options, the initial consultation is free. A middle-aged woman who had been seated a few rows behind them, in first class, approached, her expression concerned. Excuse me, she said. I couldn't help overhearing. I saw what happened at the gate too, and I took a video. She held up her phone. I thought you might want it, in case you need evidence. Janelle was momentarily speechless. A complete stranger had recorded the incident, anticipating that she might need proof. Thank you, she managed. Could you send it to me? The woman nodded, and they quickly exchanged information. I'm Lisa, by the way, she said as she forwarded the video. What that man did was completely unprofessional. I've already filed a complaint with the airline about it. Another passenger, an older gentleman in a well-tailored suit, paused as he passed them. I witnessed it too, he said. Absolutely unacceptable behavior from that gate agent. I'd be happy to provide a statement if needed. He handed Janelle his own business card. He was a retired judge. Janelle felt a wave of emotion threaten to overwhelm her. After the confrontation with Trevor, she had felt so alone, so singled out. Now she was discovering that multiple people had not only noticed the injustice but were willing to stand up and say something about it. Mom, why is everyone giving you cards? Zoe asked, tugging at Janelle's hand. They're just being helpful, sweetie, Janelle explained, trying to keep her voice steady. Let's go find Grandma, okay? She's probably waiting for us. As they made their way through the terminal, Janelle's phone buzzed with the incoming video from Lisa. She would watch it later when Zoe wasn't around. For now, she focused on navigating the crowded airport, heading toward the baggage claim area where her mother would be waiting. David Goldstein walked alongside them. "I don't want to pressure you," he said, "but cases like this are important. They're how things change." "I understand," Janelle said, "and I appreciate your concern. I just need some time to think." Of course. He stopped at an intersection where their paths would diverge. "Take all the time you need. My direct line is on the card." As they parted ways, Janelle felt the weight of the decision before her. A part of her wanted to put the whole incident behind her to focus on her job and her daughter and the life she had worked so hard to build. But another part knew that staying silent would only allow such behavior to continue unchallenged. They found Janelle's mother waiting near the baggage carousel, her face lighting up at the sight of her granddaughter. Zoe ran the last few steps, throwing herself into her grandmother's open arms. "Grandma, we saw Mickey and Minnie and I went on Space Mountain twice. Did you now?" Eleanor Richardson laughed, hugging Zoe tightly before looking up at her daughter. "And how about you? Did you have a good time too?" "It was wonderful," Janelle said, embracing her mother. "The parks were magical, and the conference went well, too." Eleanor studied her daughter's face. But something happened. It wasn't a question. After raising Janelle alone for 18 years, Eleanor could read her daughter like a book. "I'll tell you later," Janelle murmured, with a slight nod toward Zoe. "It's nothing we can't handle." Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press the issue. "Well, let's get your bags and head home. It's past somebody's bedtime, even if she is too excited to notice." They collected their luggage and made their way to the parking garage where Eleanor had left her car. As they loaded the suitcases into the trunk, Janelle's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost ignored it. It was late and she was tired. But something made her answer. "Ms. Richardson? This is Marissa Chen from the airline. We met earlier, at the gate in Orlando." Janelle felt her pulse quicken. "Yes, I remember. I hope your flight was comfortable. I'm calling because I wanted to personally apologize again for the incident at the gate. What happened was unacceptable, and I want you to know that we're taking it very seriously." "I appreciate that," Janelle said, moving a few steps away from her mother and daughter. "Our customer relations team will be reaching out to you tomorrow to discuss this further, but I wanted to let you know right away that Trevor has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." Janelle hadn't expected such swift action. "I thank you for telling me. It's important to us that all our passengers feel welcome and respected," Marissa continued. "What happened today fell far short of that standard." After ending the call, Janelle stood for a moment in the cool night air, processing this latest development. She hadn't even filed a formal complaint yet, and already the airline was taking action. Perhaps the other passengers who had witnessed the incident had made their voices heard as well. "Everything okay?" Eleanor asked as Janelle returned to the car. "I think it will be," Janelle said, helping Zoe into the back seat. "Let's go home." The drive from the airport to Janelle's house took about 40 minutes. Zoe fell asleep almost immediately, the excitement of the trip finally catching up with her, in the front seat with her daughter safely dozing. Janelle quietly filled her mother in on what had happened at the Orlando gate. Eleanor's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she listened, her expression darkening. She had raised her daughter, in a different time, had experienced her own share of discrimination over the years, had taught Janelle from an early age about the realities of being black in America. But that didn't make it any easier to hear about her child and now her grandchild facing the same old prejudices. "You going to call that lawyer?" she asked when Janelle finished. "I'm thinking about it." Eleanor nodded. "Good. Some battles are worth fighting even when they're hard." She glanced in the rearview mirror at her sleeping granddaughter, "especially when they're hard." By the time they reached Janelle's modest but comfortable home in a quiet Denver suburb, it was nearly midnight. Eleanor helped carry the sleeping Zoe to her bedroom, while Janelle brought in the luggage. "You want me to stay the night?" "Eleanor, offered, watching as Janelle tucked Zoe in. No, that's okay, we'll be fine. Thank you for picking us up. Eleanor hugged her daughter tightly. You call me if you need anything, and let me know what happens with the airline. After seeing her mother off, Janelle finally had a moment to herself. The house was quiet, everything just as they had left it a week ago. She should go to bed. She had that important meeting in the morning, but her mind was still too active. She sat at the kitchen table and pulled out her phone, opening the video Lisa had sent her. Watching the incident play out from an observer's perspective was surreal. She could see the confusion on her own face, the growing frustration, the moment when she realized what was really happening. She could see Zoe pressing against her side, picking up on the tension, and she could see Trevor's dismissive attitude, his refusal to make eye contact, his preferential treatment of the white passengers who came after them. It was all there, undeniable. Janelle set the phone down, her decision made. She would call David Goldstein in the morning after dropping Zoe at school. This wasn't just about one bad experience at an airport gate. It was about making sure such experiences became less common for everyone. Her phone buzzed with an incoming email notification. It was from the airline's customer relations department, sent despite the late hour. Dear Ms. Richardson, we are deeply concerned about the incident you experienced at our Orlando gate today. We strive to provide a respectful and inclusive environment for all our passengers, and we sincerely apologize that your experience fell short of this commitment. We would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience to address this matter fully. Please contact us at the number below or let us know when would be a good time to reach you. In the meantime, we have issued a full refund for your round-trip tickets and have added 50,000 bonus miles to your account. While we understand that this in no way makes up for your experience, we hope it demonstrates our sincerity in making this right. Sincerely, Catherine Washington, Head of Customer Relations. Janelle read the email twice. A full refund and 50,000 miles was a significant offering, enough for another round-trip first-class ticket. It was more than she had expected. But was it enough? She thought about Zoe's question on the plane. Why was that man so mean to us? She thought about the next black woman who might approach Trevor's gate, excited for her first-class experience, only to be met with suspicion and disrespect. She thought about all the times in her life when she had swallowed her anger and hurt, when she had chosen to move on rather than make waves. No, it wasn't enough. Not this time. Janelle composed a brief, polite response thanking Catherine Washington for the email and agreeing to speak with her the following afternoon. Then she added, While I appreciate the refund and miles, I want to be clear that my concern is not about compensation. It's about accountability and change. I have video evidence of the incident, as well as contact information for multiple witnesses who observed the discriminatory treatment. I will be consulting with legal counsel before our discussion tomorrow. Sincerely, Janelle Richardson. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then prepared for bed. Tomorrow would be a busy day. The meeting at work, the call with the airline reaching out to David Goldstein. But as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Janelle felt something she hadn't expected. A sense of purpose, of righteous determination. All her life, she had worked hard to provide for herself and her daughter, to build a career, to create a stable home. She had avoided confrontation, had tried to fit in, had smiled through 1,000 small indignities. Today, something had shifted. Today she had stood her ground, and tomorrow she would take the first step toward making sure what happened to her wouldn't happen to someone else. With that thought, Janelle finally closed her eyes and drifted into sleep. The business cards, from David Goldstein and the retired judge sitting on her nightstand, waiting for morning. Janelle woke before her alarm, her mind already racing with the day ahead. She showered quickly and laid out Zoe's clothes, the Disney princess shirt as promised, paired with jeans and a light jacket for the Denver chill. She made breakfast, packed Zoe's lunch, and reviewed her presentation notes one last time before waking her daughter. 5 more minutes, Zoe mumbled, pulling the covers over her head. No can do, sleepyhead, Janelle said, gently tugging the blanket down. School today. Remember, you were excited to tell your friends about meeting Elsa. Zoe's eyes opened at that, sleep giving way to excitement. And Anna. And Olaf. That's right. But you need to eat breakfast first. The morning routine felt comfortingly normal after the disruption of yesterday. Janelle relished the familiar rhythm of it, helping Zoe brush her teeth, making sure her homework folder was in her backpack, discussing what she wanted for dinner that night. For these few precious moments, the incident at the airport receded to the background. They left the house at 7:30, right on schedule. Janelle dropped Zoe at school, exchanging quick greetings with the other parents and promising to hear all about her day at pickup time. Then she drove to her office, using the quiet of the car to mentally shift gears from mom mode to professional mode. Her phone rang as she pulled into the office parking lot. The screen showed David Goldstein. Janelle hesitated only briefly before answering. "Ms. Richardson, I hope I'm not calling too early." "No, it's fine. I was actually planning to call you today." "I'm glad to hear that." There was a pause. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. After you left, I spoke with a few other passengers who witnessed the incident. They were quite disturbed by what they saw." Janelle wasn't surprised. "I received a call from the airline last night. They've placed the gate agent on administrative leave." "That's a start," David said. "But if you're interested in pursuing this further, I think we have a strong case." Discriminatory treatment in public accommodations is a serious matter. "I've been thinking about it all night," Janelle admitted. "I have a meeting with a client this morning, but I could come by your office this afternoon. Would 2 hours work?" "That would be perfect. My assistant will send you the address and parking information." After ending the call, Janelle sat in her car for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The decision to pursue legal action wasn't one she took lightly. It would mean time, energy, possibly unwanted attention. But the alternative, doing nothing, felt increasingly unacceptable. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss. "Conference room ready when you are. Client just arrived." Janelle grabbed her laptop bag and headed into the building. For the next 3 hours, she immersed herself in work, presenting the marketing strategy she had developed for a major retail chain. The client was impressed, asking thoughtful questions and ultimately agreeing to move forward with the campaign. Under normal circumstances, Janelle would have been elated by the successful meeting. Today, her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation at the gate, to the attorney's call, to the decision she needed to make. After the meeting, she declined her colleague's invitation to a celebratory lunch, claiming she had errands to run. It wasn't entirely untrue. She had arranged to speak with Catherine Washington, the airline's head of customer relations, at noon. Janelle found a quiet spot in a small park near her office. The day was cool but sunny, the park mostly empty except for a few people walking dogs or eating lunch on benches. She sat under a large oak tree and dialed the number from the email. Catherine answered on the second ring. "Ms. Richardson, thank you for calling. I've been hoping to speak with you." "Thank you for reaching out," Janelle said, keeping her tone professional. "First, I want to personally apologize for your experience at our Orlando gate yesterday. I've reviewed the reports from our gate supervisor, Marissa Chen, as well as statements from several passengers who witnessed the incident. What happened was completely unacceptable and does not reflect our company's values or policies." Janelle appreciated the direct acknowledgement. "I'm glad to hear that. Can I ask what specific actions the airline is taking in response?" "Yes, of course. As you may already know, Trevor Simmons, the gate agent involved, has been placed on administrative leave. We're conducting a thorough investigation, including interviews with staff and review of security footage. Additionally, we're implementing a mandatory refresher training on unconscious bias for all customer-facing employees." It was more than Janelle had expected, but still not entirely satisfying. "I appreciate those steps, but I'm concerned that this isn't an isolated incident. If it happened to me, it's likely happened to others." "You're absolutely right," Catherine said, surprising Janelle with her candor. "And that's why we want to address this systematically, not just as a one-off case. We've been working to improve our diversity and inclusion practices, but clearly, we still have work to do. Your experience highlights gaps in our training and oversight that we need to address. I've been contacted by several witnesses who recorded the incident, Janelle said. I'm meeting with an attorney this afternoon to discuss my options. There was a brief pause on the line. I understand, Catherine said finally. That's certainly your right. I hope you know that we're committed to making this right, both for you personally and in terms of our broader policies and practices. I'm glad to hear that, but I want to be clear. This isn't about getting more compensation or special treatment. It's about ensuring that no one else has to experience what my daughter and I went through. I completely understand. Would you be open to a further conversation about how we might work together on this? Your insights as someone who has experienced discrimination firsthand would be invaluable to our efforts to improve. Janelle hadn't expected this approach. What exactly are you suggesting? I'd like to arrange a meeting with our Chief Diversity Officer and VP of Customer Experience. We're in the process of revising our training programs and developing new protocols for handling customer complaints related to discrimination. Your perspective could help shape those initiatives. It was an interesting proposition, but Janelle remained cautious. I'd need to discuss this with my attorney before committing to anything. Of course. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, is there anything else we can do to address your immediate concerns? Actually, yes. I'd like information about Trevor Simmons' employment history. Has he had similar complaints filed against him before? Catherine hesitated. I can't share specific personnel information, but I can tell you that we're reviewing his entire employment record as part of our investigation. I understand. I also want to know what specific actions will be taken to prevent this kind of incident in the future. We're still formulating our response, but I can share our initial plans. Beyond the refresher training I mentioned, we're exploring changes to our oversight procedures for boarding processes, enhancing our customer feedback mechanisms, and reviewing our hiring and promotion practices to ensure they support diversity at all levels. They spoke for a few more minutes, with Catherine promising to follow up in writing with more details about the airline's planned actions. When the call ended, Janelle felt cautiously optimistic. The airline seemed genuinely concerned and committed to addressing the issue, not just making it go away with compensation and platitudes. But she would still keep her appointment with David Goldstein. Good intentions weren't always enough, and having legal counsel would ensure that the airline followed through on its promises. She had just enough time to grab a quick lunch before her meeting with the attorney. As she walked toward a nearby cafe, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a social media alert. Someone had tagged her in a post. Curious, she opened the app. A video was circulating online. The confrontation at the gate filmed by Lisa or perhaps another passenger. The caption read, "Watch how this black mother is treated when trying to board a first-class flight with her daughter." Flying while black. Discrimination. The post already had thousands of views and hundreds of comments, most expressing outrage at Trevor's behavior and support for Janelle. There were news organizations requesting permission to use the footage, people sharing similar experiences, calls for a boycott of the airline. Janelle felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Validation that others could clearly see the discrimination she had faced, but also discomfort at becoming the center of such public attention. She hadn't posted the video herself, hadn't sought this spotlight, but now it was here, and she would need to decide how to respond. Her phone rang again. It was her mother. "Have you seen it?" Eleanor asked without preamble. "The video?" "Just now." "It's everywhere, baby. My friend Carol sent it to me this morning, and now I'm seeing it on the local news. They're trying to find out who you are." Janelle sighed. "Great. Just what I needed today." "You doing okay? Need me to pick up Zoe from school?" "No, I'm fine. I have a meeting with an attorney this afternoon, but I'll still make it to pick up on time." "An attorney? Good. Don't let them sweep this under the rug." After reassuring her mother that she was handling the situation, Janelle ended the call and continued to the cafe. As she waited in line to order, she scrolled through more comments on the video. Most were supportive, but there were also the Inevitable trolls questioning her story or suggesting she was overreacting. Some people were speculating about her identity, with a few even posting links to her professional profile. The public nature of it all made her uneasy. She had wanted accountability, yes, but not necessarily a viral moment. What would this mean for her job? For Zoe? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her boss. Just saw a video that looks like it might be you at an airport. Everything okay? Call me when you can. Janelle ordered her lunch to go and found a quiet corner to call him back. I was going to tell you about it, she said, after confirming that it was indeed her in the video. It happened yesterday on our return flight from Orlando. Sounds like you had a rough time, he said, his tone sympathetic. Do you need to take some time off? The client was thrilled with your presentation, by the way. They've already signed off on the proposal. That's great news, Janelle said, relieved that her professional standing seemed secure. And no, I don't need time off. I'm handling it. Well, if you change your mind, just let me know. And Janelle, for what it's worth, I think you showed remarkable restraint in that video. I'm not sure I would have been as composed. His support was unexpected, but welcome. Thank you. That means a lot. By the time she arrived at David Goldstein's office, the video had been shared tens of thousands of times. Janelle had turned off her social media notifications, finding the constant pings too distracting. She needed to focus on the legal aspects of the situation now. David's office was in a modern building downtown, the reception area tastefully decorated with local artwork. He greeted her warmly, showing her into a conference room where they would not be disturbed. I've seen the video, he said, as they sat down. It's gone viral. So I've noticed, Janelle said dryly. This changes things somewhat. The public attention puts additional pressure on the airline to respond appropriately. Have you heard from them since last night? Janelle filled him in on her conversation with Catherine Washington, including the invitation to meet with the airline's diversity and customer experience executives. David nodded thoughtfully. That's a positive sign. Many companies would go straight to damage control mode, trying to silence you with a settlement and NDA. What would you advise? Should I meet with them? It could be beneficial, but not without proper preparation and representation. I'd want to be present for any such meeting, and we'd need to establish clear goals and boundaries beforehand. They spent the next hour discussing Janelle's options. David outlined what a discrimination lawsuit would involve, the legal standards, the potential timeline, the possible outcomes. He was thorough and straightforward, neither pushing her toward litigation nor discouraging it. The reality is, he explained, these cases can be lengthy and emotionally draining. You'd be in the public eye throughout the process. That's something to consider, especially given that your daughter is involved. Janelle appreciated his candor. What alternatives do we have? We could pursue a settlement with the airline that includes not just compensation, but specific commitments to policy changes and training improvements. Given the public attention, they have a strong incentive to resolve this quickly and positively. This approach made sense to Janelle. It could achieve meaningful change without the prolonged stress of a lawsuit. If we go that route, what would you suggest as our key demands? David pulled out a legal pad and began jotting notes. First, a substantial settlement for you and your daughter, not just as compensation for the incident itself, but also for the emotional distress and public exposure. Second, verifiable commitments to improved training and policies with specific metrics and timelines. Third, some form of ongoing oversight or reporting to ensure compliance. They continued discussing strategy, with David proposing various approaches, and Janelle providing feedback based on her priorities. By the end of the meeting, they had developed a preliminary framework for negotiations with the airline. I'll draw up a formal engagement letter for your review, David said as they wrapped up. In the meantime, I'd suggest limiting your public statements about the incident. The video speaks for itself, and anything you say could potentially impact our negotiations, Janelle agreed, thanking him for his time and insights. As she left his office, she felt more centered than she had all day. Having a clear plan forward had eased some of the anxiety she'd been carrying since the confrontation. She made it to Zoe's school, just as the final bell rang. Children poured out of the building, their backpacks bouncing as they ran to waiting parents. Zoe emerged with her best friend, the two of them deep in animated conversation. "Mom!" Zoe called when she spotted Janelle, breaking away to run toward her. "Guess what? My teacher said we can bring something from our vacation for show and tell tomorrow." "That's great, sweetheart. What are you thinking of bringing?" "My Moana doll. And maybe the Mickey ears, or the shell necklace we got at the beach." Zoe's enthusiasm was contagious, her energy seemingly undiminished by the long trip and late night. As they walked to the car, Zoe chattered about her day, the spelling test she aced, the new science project they were starting, the funny thing that happened at lunch. Janelle listened attentively, grateful for this moment of normalcy amid the chaos that had erupted around the airport incident. They were halfway home when Janelle's phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. The display showed, "Catherine Washington, airline." Janelle hesitated, then answered, keeping her responses vague given Zoe's presence. "Ms. Richardson, I'm calling because there's been a significant development. The video of the incident has gone viral, and we're receiving a high volume of media inquiries." "I'm aware of the video," Janelle said carefully. "I'm not in a position to discuss details at the moment." She glanced at Zoe, who was now looking curiously at the car's speakers. "I understand. I wanted to let you know that our CEO, Robert Chen, would like to speak with you personally. He's taking this matter very seriously and wants to address it directly with you." This was unexpected. "I've engaged legal counsel," Janelle said. "Any discussions would need to include my attorney." "Of course, we completely respect that. Would it be possible to arrange a call for tomorrow?" "I'll need to check with my attorney and get back to you." After ending the call, Janelle noticed Zoe watching her with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, who was that lady? Was she talking about the mean man at the airport?" Janelle sighed inwardly. She had hoped to shield Zoe from the aftermath of the incident, but her perceptive daughter had clearly picked up more than she realized. "Yes. Baby. Remember how that gate agent wasn't very nice to us? The airline is trying to make sure that doesn't happen to other people." Zoe nodded solemnly. "Good. He made you sad, and that made me sad." The simple observation cut straight to Janelle's heart. "I'm sorry you had to see that, Zoe. Sometimes adults don't behave the way they should." "Ms. Chen was nice, though," Zoe pointed out. "She helped us get on the plane." "Yes, she did. And that's important to remember, too, that there are helpful people in the world, not just hurtful ones." They arrived home to find several news vans parked on their street. Someone had apparently figured out where they lived. Janelle drove past her house without stopping, making a quick decision to go to her mother's instead. She called Eleanor from the car. "Mom, can we come over? There are reporters at our house." "Of course. I'll put on some dinner." "Is everything okay?" "We're fine. I'll explain when we get there." Zoe thankfully didn't question the change of plans. She was always happy to visit her grandmother, especially when it meant an impromptu dinner and likely some extra treats. When they arrived at Eleanor's modest bungalow across town, Janelle finally felt her shoulders relax. Her mother's home had always been a safe haven, a place where the outside world's pressures seemed to recede. Eleanor welcomed them with warm hugs and the smell of her famous fried chicken already cooking. "Go wash up, little one," she told Zoe. "I think there might be some cookies in the kitchen for you." Once Zoe was out of earshot, Eleanor turned to her daughter. "What's going on? Why are reporters at your house?" Janelle sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "The video of what happened at the airport has gone viral. Someone figured out who I am and where I live." Eleanor's expression darkened. "Vultures. Are you going to talk to them?" "Not if I can help it. My attorney advised against making public statements for now." "Good advice." Eleanor sat beside her daughter. "This is bigger than you expected, isn't it?" Janelle nodded. "The airline CEO wants to speak with me tomorrow, and they're talking about having me consult on their diversity training." Eleanor considered this. "Sounds like they're scared of the bad publicity." "Probably. But if it leads to real change, does the motivation matter?" "Maybe not. But don't let them use you as a token, Janelle. Don't let them parade you around as Proof that they're fixing the problem, unless they're actually doing the work. It was good counsel, as her mother's advice usually was. I won't. That's partly why I hired David Goldstein. He'll make sure any agreement we reach has teeth. Eleanor patted her daughter's hand. You always were the smart one. Now let's have some dinner and try to give Zoe a normal evening, okay? Tomorrow will take care of itself. As they moved to the kitchen to help with dinner preparations, Janelle's phone buzzed with a text from David. CEO call confirmed for 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be on the line. This is a positive development. Janelle showed the message to her mother, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. They both knew that the real test would be what came after the call, whether the airline's contrition translated into meaningful action. For tonight, though, Janelle would focus on her daughter, on this dinner, on the small moment of peace in her mother's kitchen. The world outside, with its viral videos and news vans and corporate damage control, could wait until tomorrow. As they sat down to eat, Zoe regaling her grandmother with tales of Disney World, Janelle found herself thinking about the unlikely chain of events that had led them here. A split-second decision by a gate agent had set in motion a sequence that might actually lead to positive change. It was a reminder that sometimes, standing up for what was right could have ripple effects far beyond the initial confrontation. And for tonight, that was enough to give her hope. 3 months had passed since that fateful day at the Orlando airport. Janelle sat in the conference room of the airline's headquarters, reviewing her notes one last time before the press conference. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Denver's skyline gleamed in the late morning sun. The mountain view still took her breath away, even after living here for over a decade. You ready for this? David Goldstein asked, adjusting his tie as he took the seat beside her. As ready as I'll ever be, Janelle replied, smoothing her blazer. She'd chosen her outfit carefully that morning, professional but approachable, confident without being intimidating. Today wasn't about looking powerful. It was about representing something larger than herself. The door opened, and Robert Chen, the airline's CEO, entered with Catherine Washington and several other executives Janelle had come to know over the past months of negotiations. The press is setting up in the main conference center, Robert informed them. We should head down in about 15 minutes. Is there anything you need before we start? Janelle shook her head. I think we're good. I reviewed the statement again this morning, and it accurately reflects our agreement. Excellent. Robert's relief was evident. The past 3 months had been challenging for the airline as well, with the viral video sparking widespread criticism and calls for boycotts. Today's announcement was as much about the company's future as it was about addressing Janelle's experience. The negotiations had been intense at times. After the initial call with Robert, in which he had offered a heartfelt apology and acknowledged the systemic issues the incident revealed, they had entered into serious discussions about what meaningful change would look like. David had been instrumental in ensuring that the settlement wasn't just about financial compensation, though that aspect was significant, with Janelle receiving a 7-figure sum that would secure Zoe's college education and allow Janelle to pay off her mortgage. More importantly, the agreement included concrete commitments to policy changes, training improvements, and ongoing accountability measures. Ms. Richardson, Catherine said, interrupting Janelle's thoughts, I want to thank you again for your willingness to work with us on this. Your insights have been invaluable in reshaping our approach to diversity and inclusion. Janelle appreciated the sentiment, though she remained cautiously optimistic about the long-term impact. The real test will be in the implementation, she reminded them. The commitments we're announcing today are just the beginning. Absolutely, Robert agreed. That's why we're so pleased that you've agreed to serve on our newly formed Passenger Advocacy Council. Your perspective will help ensure we stay on track. The council had been Janelle's idea. A diverse group of travelers, including those who had experienced discrimination, who would provide ongoing feedback on the airline's policies and practices. It was one of several structural changes the company was implementing as part of the settlement. A young assistant knocked on the door. They're ready for you downstairs, Mr. Chen. Thank you, Alex. Robert stood, straightening his jacket. Shall we? They made their way to the elevator. a nervous energy palpable among the group. For the airline executives, today represented a turning point, an opportunity to transform a PR disaster into a commitment to positive change. For Janelle and David, it was the culmination of months of careful negotiation and advocacy. As they rode down to the main floor, Janelle's mind drifted to Zoe. Her daughter was at school today, blissfully unaware of the press conference. Janelle had done her best to shield Zoe from the media frenzy that had followed the viral video, though she had used the incident as an opportunity for age-appropriate conversations about prejudice and standing up for oneself. "Remember," David murmured as the elevator doors opened, "you don't have to answer any questions that make you uncomfortable. Stick to the agreed statement." Janelle nodded, appreciating his protectiveness. The media attention had been one of the hardest aspects of the past 3 months. She had declined all interview requests until now, focusing instead on the negotiations and, more importantly, maintaining normalcy for Zoe. The conference room was packed with journalists, cameras, and recording equipment. Janelle recognized reporters from major networks and newspapers, all eager to cover the resolution of what had become a national story about racial